The Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of the most successful movie franchises of all time. Not only a hit with mainstream audiences, it achieved a critical acclaim rarely seen in blockbuster cinema. In short, people really dug it, and its influence was enormous. But like with any successful Hollywood film, this influence usually came in the form of pale imitation, taking the same tropes or visuals and placing them in a similar story to far lesser success. When is the last time a blockbuster series wasn't automatically a trilogy with an epic battle? Yet perhaps its strangest imitator is its very own prequel by the same director, Peter Jackson's The Hobbit. With a significant box office decline, critical backlash, and cultural disinterest, it's quite clear that this trilogy has not been received the same way as its predecessor. The question is, why exactly? Like his previous imitators, Jackson mistakenly believes that replicating the same archetypes, plot points, and stakes will provide the same dramatic effect as before, whether it's appropriate to this new story or not. It's already been discussed to death the fact that Jackson has stretched this 300-page children's novel into another Lord of the Rings trilogy, expanding the story with subplots to make it an epic with a large cast of characters and a darker tone.
Your world will burn. The flames of war are upon you.
The darker tone of The Lord of the Rings does not fit within this context, because it only acts as tonally inappropriate foreshadowing. The looming return of Sauron has no impact on Bilbo or Thorin. In The Lord of the Rings, Sauron and the Ring were an actual threat to our heroes. We weren't concerned about the end of the world, we were concerned about the end of their world, and recreating the corruption of the ring doesn't develop into anything in the future. They're just isolated moments of characterization. Several of the characters are made out as replacements for the previous ones from Lord of the Rings, only without any of the conflict, depth, or necessity to the plot. Thorin is reimagined from being a bitter, pathetic old man reclaiming lost riches, to a warrior king preparing to ascend the throne he was destined for. Sound familiar? The problem with this is that, spoilers, he is meant to be a tragic character whose pride and greed lead to his downfall. More like Boromir than Aragorn, yet the films outright deify him, giving us a classic case of telling us about how honorable and brave he is, yet showing him as an unlikable brute.
You're afraid. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar.
There is one I could call king.
Aragorn earned our trust, and we watched him grow into his role. The film never tried to sell us on how honorable Boromir was. We knew he couldn't be trusted from the start, and we got the payoff to that in one film. So what happens when a character like that shares more focus and screen time than the protagonist? How about more of those epic set pieces, only this time much longer and with much more CGI? This now becomes this. The famous Moria sequence works because the tension comes from something as relatable as trying to get across a small distance without falling. It's a simple goal with a realistic and understandable threat. Setup, escalating obstacles, a ticking clock, and an exciting climax that propels them to their goal. Whereas here, our heroes are easily dispatching hordes of CGI creatures. Our brains can tell they aren't hitting anything real. The fact that they're surviving ridiculous situations without a scratch prevents us from getting involved with the scene. How can we feel tension for their safety when they're not operating on any level of physics that we can relate to? Not only that, but in the time it takes for the Fellowship to encounter a number of threats and evolving situations, each with their own setups and climaxes, these set pieces are just piling more and more on top of themselves. They lack sequencing and beats within the action. It worked in Lord of the Rings because they built to those big moments on a dramatic level, and for every second of spectacle, the focus always fell back onto character and story. Every action beat contains a close-up reaction of a character to hammer home the tension and empathy. Action, reaction. Action, reaction. Action, reaction. Distant events aren't engaging unless they're grounded by human response we can connect with. All of this adds up to why these movies feel so long, despite being shorter than Lord of the Rings. They lack the momentum and economic writing that made the length of the original so easy to digest. Just compare how much happens at the halfway point of each film.
You took our money.
The real problem comes from confusing events and plotting for story and drama. Most of the dialogue is just exposition without any dramatic weight behind it.
When Angmar fell, the men of the north took his body and all that he possessed and sealed it within the high fells of Rudal.
When we hear this,
The Nine have left Minas Morgul.
They've reached the Shire.
They will find the ring and kill the one who carries it.
we think, what's Frodo gonna do about this? When we hear this,
The enemy has returned.
we think, wow, I can't wait to see that in Lord of the Rings. So where's Bilbo? This scene is so compelling because the relevant information is framed through character conflict, motivations, and dramatic development. Simple, to-the-point lines that have emotional stakes and impact.
One of you must do this.
It's why its equivalent scene in The Hobbit doesn't work as well, because they spend so long on the logistics, when the only thing that needs to be set up is Bilbo going on the quest. Everything that happens in the plot should be in service to the basic story foundation of a nervous hobbit going on an adventure. So by splitting it into 3 films, the only major act breaks or twists are delayed until the final film. While they keep encountering different situations, nothing is changing or developing in terms of story. It's linear and static, getting to the mountain and encountering obstacles on the way. It's the dramatic equivalent to the half hour of the Fellowship traveling from Rivendell through Moria, trying to survive getting from one place to the other. People may joke that it's just about people walking, but there's an actual story taking place under the surface of the plot. Lord of the Rings was so big that they could contain individual stories for each film, with their own setup, conflict, and payoff that gives us the feeling of a complete experience. We never feel unsatisfied that we're not getting the full picture. Less one story told in 3 parts, more 3 small stories that form an epic. None of these movies stand on their own as individual stories, a point where the desolation of Smaug ends with a hard cliffhanger. We can't invest in a 3-year journey if the only payoff is at the end. These characteristics that supposedly define Lord of the Rings, an epic quest, amazing locations, intricate world building, only succeed with audiences if there's a thematic or dramatic purpose behind it. We don't actually care about fantasy, we care about these people. This is what Hollywood has always done in response to a popular, critically acclaimed film. Ape its most superficial qualities in the assumption that that was the key to its popularity. It's a classic case of style over substance. But they're mistaken. Samwise himself said it best.
Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why.